Kia ora koutou. My thanks to the Fizz Symposium for organising this. It has been amazing today to watch the diversity of action, particularly from young people and from regions. It's been phenomenal. Well done. My presentation is actually going to, well, I should never say that. Could be reasonably short. I hope to leave enough time, boys are laughing at me. I hope to leave enough time for questions and answers. And what I'm going to do, I've elected to talk to three issues that I think are quite contemporary and issues that I've learned myself in the last year, and I hope that you will find useful as well. So, having watched everybody else, oh, there we go. So I'm going to talk about how might a sugary drink tax be best structured. And I'm going to actually use something called the Grattan Institute report. I actually sit in an office in Melbourne University. I look down on this Grattan Institute. It's the best report I've seen. So I'm going to just talk briefly to a table out of that, because I learnt a lot from that and I'm supposed to be an expert. How the benefits realised, and I'm going to look at a paper that I was co-author on with Adam Briggs and colleagues in the UK, looking at the new tax that's going to be introduced there at the beginning of next year. It's really interesting talking about how much comes from direct price change versus industry reformulating. And then I'm going to talk about an issue that's a bit down the track, which is what about taxing sugar across the whole food chain? So those are the three things that I'm going to briefly talk to. So what's the best structure for a sugar tax? So here we go, this is the Grattan Institute report, orange building just outside my window when I sit in Melbourne. So what's the problem? Well, the details matter here a little bit. I'm going to go into a lot of them. For example, if you have 20% tax on sugary drinks, it will increase the price of an expensive can by 40 cents, but a cheap can by only 20 cents. And in New Zealand, this has become known as the John Gibson concern. John Gibson is a very good economist at Waikato University, but he's been touted with the research he's doing funded by the Marsden, which says, whoa, let's slow down here in how we do it, and become a bit of a roadblock. Nevertheless, the issue is valid. If you just do a percentage tax, you may not get people shifting consumption to low sugar, but just going to cheaper high sugar. So the issue matters. So as far as a tax, justified on third-party grounds, on externalities, that's the cost that the health system society bears, 600 million, a million or a billion if you include productivity costs. Knowledge asymmetry, particularly want to acknowledge Sadiana for doing her presentation and all the stuff that Coca-Cola's doing, but frankly, we're not all rational consumers. A price signal helps. Okay, so this is the table. I'm just going to briefly talk through this. This is the one table out of the Grattan Institute report. I think it's really useful. So their best option is a specific excise tax on sugar based on the content. So you tax per gram of sugar in the drink. Pretty sophisticated. These days we could pull it off, because so we've got FPOS machines, we've got scanners and all that sort of stuff. But it isn't the sophisticated at the end, but you are taxing directly the sugar content in the drink. The second option is actually what the UK are doing, whereby they tax on the amount of sugar in the drink in three tiers. In this case, it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 2. But the industry gets taxed by the amount of product they sell in the high sugar, medium sugar and low sugar bands. That's what the UK is about to introduce. Notice there it encourages product reformulation. We'll come back to that in about 2 or 3 minutes. Next one is where you do a specific excise on the volume, so 30 cents per litre tax on SSBs. So that is equivalent basically to what is in the policy brief over there. Put 50 cents per litre or $1 per litre on drinks. So it's not ideal, but it's better than the last one, which is the one we probably, and myself included, or naively talked about in previous years. Let's just whack 20% on. And you then got the John Gibson problem. So those are the options there. So I found that very useful in my table. I hope that's useful for you. It's a very easy report to find. Just search Grattan Report, Soft Drinks 2016. And basically this is what we're proposing here. This is what's happening in the UK. I'm not sure if anybody's actually done that one up there. So take-home messages from this first part. A simple ad valorem percentage tax is not ideal. Ideal is directly proportional to sugar concentration. And the tiered tax is what the UK is proposing. And may encourage product reformulation, and let's have a little look at it now. So here we go. Here's a paper that I was just a part author on this, a bunch of Brits working on this. We published in Lancet Public Health earlier this year about what's going to happen from 1 January next year in the UK. So essentially you've got a 3-tier tax on the industry. The highest levy is on the greater than 8 grams per 100 ml. Then there's a medium tax for the 5 to 8 grams per 100 mil, and then no tax for less than 5 grams. So it's a tiered tax thing on the industry. Now, we simulated 6 scenarios. We'll mostly focus on the left-hand column there. So reformulation. So the industry, because it's a tiered tax, they'll want to get their products down to the lower tax band, so they'll reformulate. And so what we did was, well, best scenario is that high sugar drinks reduce their sugar content by 30% and mid-sugar by 15%. The 30% that comes from what Sprite has done as far as reducing their sugar, and actually Saranyana mentioned an example where they're reducing one of their products by 30%, so it's achievable by the industry. The worst case on your right is basically an industry pledge to reduce by 5% without the tax. On the price change, this paper, I'm not sure what I agree with this, but we worked on a 50% pass-through because of concerns that the industry will not want to be seen to increase their price by more than 20%. It's just the way the taxes work out. So the scenario that we model there is a 50% pass-through, and just on the medium and high sugar content drinks. And over on the right there is whereby the industry says, basically, bugger you, we'll just put tax on everything, even though you put a differential. They've got the power to do that. They could just raise the price on everything across the board. The last one is where the industry changes its marketing. And what they might do is they might reduce the sales of the high sugar, increase the sales of the low sugar items here, and then a little bit of a nudge up in the mid-sugar ones, the stevia, which has some sugar in it, but stevia as well. And there is an adverse scenario here, is where the marketing is so hard on the mid-sugar ones, you actually suck consumption out of the low sugar drinks into the mid-sugar, and this one is slightly deleterious for public health here, just to let you know what the results are. So that's what we're looking at. The key thing here is thinking about what the price does itself as a signal to the consumer versus the industry reformulation. I think it's those first 2 rows that matter the most. Busy table. We're going to look at it in 3 chunks only. Just to orientate you to the layout of the table, there's the 6 scenarios across there with results going down in columns. Males, females, age going this way, age going that way, totals down the bottom, reformulation, price change. Let's break it down. First thing I want you to notice is the very strong age gradient. So this is just one of the results. We did it for obesity, diabetes, and oral health. I'm just going to show you the obesity ones today. But look at the percentage reduction for kids compared to adults. Because kids drink more soft drinks, you get a bigger obesity bang for your tax. This is very good for reducing child obesity. Same for females. The next thing I want you to note is that for the scenario we model at least, the reformulation impact, this is in the number of people who would have been obese who are no longer obese, or it's only, the other thing to notice is only 1% reduction in the obesity rate. This is no silver bullet, but it's an important starting point. It sends a strong signal to society. It's no silver bullet though. But that amount is essentially nearly twice as much as the price change one. If it's 100% pass-through, then this is about the same as reformulation. But main lesson here is people like me who do a lot of this modelling, we normally work out the price change to the consumer. Actually, and we waffle in the discussion about what the industry will do with reformulation. The reformulation effects are probably just as big as the price signal. So you are getting a double whammy. The real impact will probably be a mixture of both of those. Market share, somewhere in between. Sorry, these boxes aren't quite long enough to pick up here, but I just want to highlight, because I'm in the game of being an honest researcher, this is hard to do. Those uncertainty intervals are wide. So we're ranging, in this one, which was 144,000 reduction in obese individuals, from 5,000 to 306,000. That's the range. That's how hard this is modelling. Nevertheless, these are 95% uncertainty intervals. Nevertheless, all those uncertainty intervals exclude 0. They're not deleterious. But we're not at all certain of the exact size. That is the nature that we're dealing with here. So take-home messages from the second part of my kōrero. You get sizable health gains. No silver bullet though. This is not going to turn child obesity around by itself, but it's going to make an important contribution from a tiered tax, albeit uncertain in size. Reformulation by the industry to avoid that higher tiered tax may be a greater positive for us as society than the price signal to consumers. Actually, I think the best way to look at it is both are going to have an impact. What the consumer does in response to price and how the industry reformulates. And the industry is already doing a lot of reformulation, so something like a tax will just help them along that path. The third paper I want to talk about is now thinking taxing sweet and sugary beverages is just a bloody no-brainer, okay? My job as a researcher is just about done here, other than occasionally talking about it like this. As a researcher, I'm now thinking ahead to what comes next. And I just want to briefly talk to that, because you'll often hear people conflate sweet and sugary beverage tax with sugar tax. They're two different things, and I'm just going to lay out some results. This was from a paper published in PLOS Medicine this year with Linda Kobiak, who is now, in 2 weeks' time, coming to join us in Otago to pursue her career here. Very smart person. And a couple of other people, and myself as the last author on this paper, modelling it in Australia with University of Melbourne being the lead on this one. So, rationale for this is if you look at the Mexico data, often we talk about the Mexican data just from the sweet and sugary beverages. Boyd's pointed this out to me, Linda's pointed this out to me. But if you actually look at it on the fat food, the junk foods that were taxed, there's quite a sizable reduction in consumption from that component of the tax as well. There's something going on here that is worth simulating through. Our models simulate through to what happens to health gain and all the way through to disability-adjusted life years averted or QALYs gained, a metric of combined amount of life expectancy allowing for poor health, and that's what we're going to look at in a sec. So, Linda, being a very smart person, and she is, she carefully used our price elasticities that Cleona and myself and others got out of our spend study and applied them in Australia, and just rejigged the price changes a little bit to end up with virtually no, less than 1% change in what the average Aussie family spends per week on because some things went up, consumption shifted, so very well designed. And the final package she used, when it had all the components turned on, so she taxed the sugar component, she taxed the saturated fat component, she taxed the salt component, yada, yada, yada. As you see a price of sausages go up by, what's that, about 20%? That goes up by only about 10%. Fresh fruit and vegetables, when you turn the subsidy on fresh fruit and vegetables on, goes down by about 20%. Here's the big mover. Coming up on the, I was going to do a race commentary of Kiwi, you remember that? Yeah. By 67, so that's the big mover in there. Ice cream gets whacked by sugar and saturated fat big time. So that's the sort of price changes we're talking about for the everything on scenario. The way we do it is we take the whole Australian population live in 2010 and we start them all out there, and it is really like a race now, and we basically simulate them all the way, oh, we're going to have to do the mouse many times. We simulate them all the way to their death. This is where I really need a keyboard with the down arrow, and basically they keep simulating all and they're dying off, eh?
There's one of them, you can pull it out.
They're dying off, there they go, they're dying off. And if they live to the ripe old age of 100 and they're still in our model, we kill them. There. So that's how the model works, the simple, there we go, dead. And then we present the results to you in this way on something called a cost effectiveness plane. On the x-axis is the health gain. So this is DALYs averted or QALYs gained, they're much the same. I hope there's no economists in the audience because we could have a half-hour debate at this point. These are thousands of DALYs averted. So way over to the right is good. And this is the cost implications for the health sector. So when we model this, we include all costs for getting diseases all the way over the rest of your lifespan, okay, for the remainder of the 2010s population. And then what we do is we can layer each intervention on it. So there we go, there's a sweet and sugary beverage tax. All those dots are one of the 2000 simulations because there is inherently a lot of uncertainty in here. Even a couple might be adverse because you might go and buy more salty chips or something. But the vast majority in here, it's good. Health gain and cost saving. There's the saturated fat tax, looking even better. There's the salt tax, looking even better. There's the sugar tax. That's taxing sugar across the food chain. Essentially, it gets 20 times there to there, the health gain, and solves 4-point-something billion to the Australian health system over the remainder of the 2010 population's life. I just want to make a little note at this point as an aside. That's the uncertainty cloud there. Work that we're now doing on the corridor, I have both Melbourne and Otago positions. On the Otago corridor, where we actually look at some of the assumptions models, suggests to me that uncertainty may be wider still. I think it's probably a good thing. We'll come back to that at the end. There, this is about sugary drink tax, I know, but this is actually kind of interesting. There is your fruit and vegetable subsidy. It is actually, the centre of mass is slightly to the left. It is slightly looking like a health loss. This is important. We're not the only group in the world to show this. This has been shown by a couple of other groups. Admittedly, one of those other groups uses the same types of models as us with different data going in, so there's a bit of collinearity in the way we do things. But why? How the hell did this happen? If you reduce the price of fresh fruit and vegetables, you free up money in the budget. It only takes buying one more packet of salty chips or something like that to lose your benefit. A fruit and vegetable subsidy, this is the key point. If you're going to remember anything from my talk, this is it. A fresh and vegetable subsidy on its own is probably a bit risky. If it's done as the carrot in a package for wider food taxes, it's probably a good thing. So you need to give the population something, and look what happens in a sec. I'll show you. This is what we call the pathway, where you layer each policy on top of the one before it, and you get further and further over to the right. So you just put them all together, and then the sweet and sugary beverage tax, the last one, just got the least health gain, and you do a fruit and vegetable subsidy at that point. It now becomes advantageous. A subsidy working with taxes on other foods, we're not the only group to show this, that looks like when it's the turning point. So at this point in time, and myself and Cleona led the shop study, the RCT, that showed that you can get 9% increase in fruit and vegetable subsidies by taking off the GST. Fantastic. But it doesn't necessarily mean to say it's a policy right to go at that point. It looks like fruit and vegetable subsidies need to have a tax underneath them as well. Just to give you a sense, we sometimes do league tables in our work where we work out the total health gain. And so these are just a bunch of interventions, like mandatory limits on salt and bread, traffic light labels on food, low-fat diet, dietary advice. Look at this. By the way, targeted interventions often don't do a lot down here. Telephone counselling. Anyway, the big ones up here are population-wide regulation, something across the whole population. These are massive numbers, and something across all foods with taxes and subsidies is getting the biggest gains there. Right, down to my finishing messages. So, potentially high health gains from a sugar tax across the food chain, much bigger. We think it's about 20 times better. If you ask me what my best guess, I say 20 times better. But I'm also quite uncertain about it. Because if we just tax the sugar and we shift people to saturated fat, or we shift them to salt, it's a really tricky ecosystem. Modelling the whole food system is quite hard, and this is why I think it's still an area for ongoing research. In my view, and I think of a lot of people, sugar and saturated fats are needing, so these are across the food chain, needing more research, not yet prior to policy and advocacy. Focus on the SSB tax first. Politically, it's too challenging at the moment to do it as well. So let's keep going on the sweet and sugary beverage tax. So that's where I got to there. Hopefully left a bit of time for questions.
To my utter delight, we have spare time for questions.
See, I did it, boy.
Do we have any questions for you? Yep.
Placing a tax on the sugary drinks, do you believe there's a secondary gain because people become more conscious of what the sugar is and other food products?
Yes. So I showed you one spillover effect onto reformulation of drinks, but I think that the spillover effects from a sweet and sugary beverage tax are likely to be large. People are going to get really used to using labels more. The industry is going to realise they've been watched seriously by government. There's a whole range of spillover effects. So whilst SSB tax are not a panacea, and the numbers we can model are big but not massive, I think there will be positive halo effects here.
Good. We've time for one more question.
Tony, some crucial element here is, are these particular items in the food system harmful, and how harmful and how consistent is that evidence? There's quite a number of meta-analyses of trials that don't show any harm from saturated fat, and
Simon's asking a really good question about what's under the hood in all our models. What's under the hood in all our models is the best meta-analysis we can find of the association of sodium with blood pressure and then on to disease. The sweet and sugary beverage the same. Saturated fat, come back to that, and then sugar as best we can tell. The evidence is changing, however. This is a highly contested area, and the bit that Simon's raising is around the saturated fat. We, in our models, work on if you shift from people from saturated fat to carbohydrate is deleterious, but if you shift from saturated fat to the good fats, you then see a benefit coming through. So that's where we're at. Simon will be one academic who doesn't quite agree with that. At the moment, I think the consensus is probably near what we're doing. But that's why I'm concerned about some of the uncertainty of these models. There's structural uncertainty there with the relative risk we're using. It is, however, the best we can do, and we are very transparent about all our assumptions so people can judge it as they wish.